I want you to picture the business section of any major bookstore you've ever walked into.
Oh, yeah. You know the exact aesthetic.
Right. The shelves are just like practically groaning under the weight of it all. You've
Yeah.
got these massive walls of leadership manuals with, bold block letter titles.
And the ghostwritten memoirs.
Oh, always. Featuring some former CEO crossing their arms super confidently on the cover.
Yeah. Or manifestos from some Silicon Valley tech founder.
Exactly. And endless 10-step guides claiming they hold the secret to, like, dominating your industry. It's overwhelming.
It really is.
And if you look at the sheer volume of this material, it feels like every single organization on Earth, big or small, has some kind of rigorous leadership curriculum or development program in place.
You think so, right?
Yeah, but then if you look around at the daily lived reality of most corporate offices, institutions, and governments, I mean, the actual quality of leadership remains stubbornly, almost remarkably mediocre.
It really is one of the most fascinating paradoxes in modern organizational behavior.
Baffling.
Right, because we are generating more literature, more seminars, and, more discussions on how to lead than at any other point in human history.
But nothing changes.
Exactly. The needle on actual employee engagement and leadership effectiveness, it barely moves. Like, at all.
Which is wild.
Yeah, I mean, if an entire global industry is producing this much content and the outcomes remain stagnant, we have to face the very real possibility that our fundamental assumptions are just deeply flawed.
Well, that's exactly why we're doing this today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We've gathered a massive stack of research for this one, you guys.
So much data.
Decades of it, really. Organizational psychology, meta-analyses, deep behavioral studies, and massive employee surveys involving hundreds of thousands of data points.
It's incredibly rigorous stuff.
Right. And our mission today is to dig through all this highly counterintuitive psychological research to find out what actually works.
Because it's not what you think.
No, not at all. When you strip away the airport bookstore bestsellers, the data suggests that what most of us believe about leadership is shaped by, well, a massive cultural illusion.
A huge one. We tend to celebrate traits like raw magnetism, unshakable confidence, and charisma.
The buzzwords.
Right, the big buzzwords. And we're completely unaware that the data shows those exact traits might actually be incredibly dangerous to an organization.
Which blew my mind when we were looking through the sources.
Oh, the contrast is stark. The behaviors that actually drive long-term organizational success, the things that genuinely elevate a team, they're surprisingly mundane.
They aren't the things that get you on the cover of a magazine.
Exactly. But to understand why we are so drawn to those flashy, dangerous traits, we first have to understand a psychological phenomenon called the romance of leadership.
The romance of leadership. I like so fascinated by this concept. It sounds like something out of a Victorian novel.
It does, yeah.
But it's actually this foundational idea in how we misunderstand business.
It really is. It describes our deeply ingrained cultural tendency to attribute complex organizational outcomes entirely to the actions of individual leaders.
Right. So taking everything and pinning it on one person.
Exactly. Whether it's a spectacular billion-dollar success or a catastrophic market-crashing failure, our brains just desperately want to assign responsibility to a single, coherent, powerful force.
I guess it's easier that way.
Much easier. We project this idea of intentionality onto what is, in reality, a highly distributed, incredibly context-dependent, and sometimes completely random set of processes.
It totally makes me think of how we view the film industry.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. Like we go to the theater, we watch this brilliant 2-hour cinematic masterpiece, and we walk out giving the director 100% of the credit.
We call them a genius.
An absolute visionary. An auteur. But by obsessing over that single hero, we conveniently forget the hundreds of crew members.
The lighting technicians who worked 14-hour days.
Exactly. The brilliant editor who literally saved the pacing in post-production. And honestly, just the sheer volume of happy accidents that happen on any movie set.
Human psychology just seems hardwired to demand a protagonist.
We really do. We need a main character.
Yeah, because we evolved to track individuals, not complex systems. It is cognitively much easier to say, this CEO saved the company,
than to say what macroeconomic shifts aligned with the specific product iteration.
Right, a product iteration that was actually developed by mid-level managers 3 years prior.
Which is usually the truth.
Exactly. And that desire for a protagonist immediately problematizes the entire leadership development industry.
How so?
while the industry focuses almost exclusively on the individual traits of a leader. But science focuses on the process and the context.
Okay, that makes sense.
So if we want to understand why leadership fails, we first have to agree on what the word actually means.
Which most people don't.
No, they don't. In organizational psychology, the most useful working definition is, this leadership is the process of influencing others toward the achievement of shared goals in a specific context.
There are some really crucial boundaries in that definition.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, first, calling it a process completely changes the game.
It does. It means it's a dynamic action.
Right, not a fixed inherent quality or a genetic trait that you are either born with or you aren't.
Exactly. And second, it relies entirely on influence.
Which is vastly different from formal authority, right? Or just having a specific title on an org chart.
Yes. You can have the title of manager and exhibit zero leadership.
So true. And third, it has to be aimed at shared goals.
And that third element is the ethical boundary line of the entire field.
Yeah, I wanted to dig into that.
Well, if the process is not in service of shared goals, like if the influence only serves the leader's ego, their bonus, or their career advancement at the direct expense of the followers, then from a psychological standpoint, we shouldn't even call it leadership.
What should we call it?
We should call it manipulation or coercion.
Wow. Yeah, that's a sharp distinction.
But historically, researchers didn't start with this nuanced, context-heavy definition. For a very long time, they were just looking for a magic bullet.
Right, the trait approach.
Exactly.
The idea that if we just measure enough successful people, we'll find the secret genetic code of a CEO.
That was the dream.
Like, we could build a sorting hat for the corporate world, Just scanning entry-level employees for the magic traits and fast-tracking them to the C-suite.
They spent over a century looking for this, just endlessly digging through personality profiles.
So what did 100 years of searching actually turn up?
Well, the findings were incredibly modest compared to the ambition of the project.
Modest is a polite way to say it.
Yeah. I mean, through various meta-analyses, they did find a few stable personality traits that show consistent positive associations with leadership.
Like extroversion, right?
Yeah. Right. Extroversion is the most prominent. The tendency towards sociability, assertiveness, and projecting a positive affect in social situations.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's consistently linked to both emerging as a leader in a group and being rated as effective by observers.
Okay, what else?
They also found that verbal intelligence shows a moderate positive association.
Just being articulate.
Exactly. And conscientiousness, meaning a person is highly reliable, organized, and goal-directed, that shows positive results too, but primarily in very stable, predictable environments.
But there's a massive catch here, right? The effect size.
Yes, the effect size is the problem.
Because these traits only explain a tiny fraction of the variance in who becomes a successful leader. It leaves this massive, glaring blind spot.
And what's the blind spot?
That the exact same personality profile that predicts massive success in one room basically guarantees absolute failure if you walk down the hall into a different room.
Yes. Let's look at how that actually plays out with extroversion.
Okay.
We tend to think of assertiveness as universally good, right?
Right. It's always seen as a positive leadership trait.
But imagine you have a highly extroverted, intensely assertive leader.
Okay, I'm picturing them.
If you drop them into a lost, demoralized group of people who are facing a crisis and are just desperate for confident direction, that assertive leader might be fantastic.
Because they step up to the whiteboard, they take charge, assign roles, and everyone in the room breathes a sigh of relief.
Exactly. It works perfectly there. But take that exact same highly assertive extrovert and put them in charge of a team of highly autonomous, deeply creative experts.
Oh, no.
Right. Say, a room full of elite software engineers or like senior research scientists who have been working on a complex problem for years.
The result would likely be catastrophic.
Totally. Those autonomous experts do not need top-down direction. They need a facilitator.
They need someone to secure their funding, shield them from corporate bureaucracy, and then just get completely out of their way.
Exactly. An overly assertive, extroverted leader in that room might feel compelled to dominate the conversation, micromanage the creative process, and ultimately alienate the entire team.
Yeah, they'd hate them. And you can see the same thing with the highly conscientious leader, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, they are brilliant when the environment is structured, when the rule book is written, and the goal is just simply optimizing a known process.
See, they love order.
Right. but drop that same highly organized person into a rapidly changing, volatile startup environment.
Where they have to make split-second decisions with incomplete data.
Yeah, and tolerate massive ambiguity. They might completely freeze up, paralyzed by the lack of structure.
So if the underlying traits are this volatile, if effectiveness relies so heavily on the specific situation, why is our culture so hopelessly addicted to the idea of the magnetic, larger-than-life leader?
That is the million-dollar question. We are utterly obsessed with the most celebrated and, frankly, the most dangerous word in the leadership dictionary.
Charisma.
Charisma.
Charisma is that magnetic personal quality that draws people in, inspires deep, almost irrational devotion, and generates a massive surge of organizational energy.
It's intoxicating.
It really is. When we look back at the great transformative figures of history, Churchill, Gandhi, Kennedy, Mandela, we are almost always looking at charismatic leadership.
Right.
And the research, notably led by Robert House, confirms that charisma is a very real phenomenon and it can be highly effective.
In certain contexts.
Leaders who possess it can communicate a compelling vision and project extraordinary confidence.
Which generates incredibly high follower motivation. Especially during, existential crises or periods of massive organizational upheaval.
Exactly. It feels amazing to be in the room with someone like that.
It does. You feel like you're part of something historic. But there is a dark side to this that those airport books systematically ignore.
They really do skip right over it.
Yeah. The research from Michael McCoby points out 3 incredibly dangerous pitfalls of the charismatic leader.
The first one is the narcissism correlation.
Which is just staggering when you look at the data.
The overlap between charisma and narcissism is startling. Now, not every charismatic leader meets the clinical definition of a narcissist, but the correlation is incredibly strong.
And narcissism, in this psychological context, involves grandiosity. Right?
Yes. Grandiosity, an inflated sense of entitlement, a fundamental lack of empathy, and a high willingness to exploit others for personal gain.
Yikes.
Right? These charismatic narcissists are phenomenal at the beginning of their tenure.
Because they generate that intense short-term engagement.
Exactly. They get everyone hyped up, but over time the mask slips.
Yeah.
And they create deeply toxic organizational cultures.
They build environments governed by fear, sycophancy, and what we might call strategic incompetence.
Yeah, strategic incompetence. I love that term.
If you are listening to this right now and you've ever felt completely exhausted after a one-on-one with your boss, not because the work was hard, but because you had to carefully navigate their ego, this is exactly what we're talking about.
It's draining.
Followers quickly learn that the absolute worst thing you can do is challenge the leader's self-image.
Right, so you end up with a room full of highly paid executives who just nod and agree.
Because the followers adapt to survive.
Exactly. If pointing out a structural flaw in the new business plan is interpreted as an insult to the leader's brilliance, the followers simply stop pointing out flaws.
Which is terrifying for a company. And that survival mechanism leads directly into the second major pitfall, the vision problem.
Right. Charismatic leadership is always fundamentally built on a compelling vision.
But a vision delivered with extraordinary hypnotic conviction can still be compelling, even when it is factually wrong, strategically disastrous, or entirely ethically compromised.
Yes, and this is where it gets really tricky.
Yeah, hold on, because I'm struggling with this part a bit.
Okay, what part?
Well, every business biography I've ever read praises a founder's unshakable vision.
The myth of the lone genius.
Right. The idea that they ignored the naysayers, pushed through the doubt, and basically forced their reality into existence.
Like the Steve Jobs mythos.
Exactly, the famous reality distortion field. Are you saying that having followers who completely buy into your vision is actually a liability?
Well, having a shared vision is crucial, but we have to distinguish between alignment and blind obedience.
Okay, explain that.
The danger is not the vision itself. The danger is the suppression of critical thought. Charisma acts as an amplifier, increasing the impact of the vision regardless of the actual quality or safety of that vision.
So if the idea is bad, charisma just makes people follow it over the cliff faster.
Exactly. When followers become deeply emotionally tethered to a charismatic leader, they frequently lose their ability to critically evaluate what the leader is proposing.
The psychological dynamic shifts,
Yes.
right? So that critical evaluation actually starts to feel like a personal betrayal.
Yes. If the leader points to a hill and says, "We're charging up that hill," and you raise your hand and say, "Wait, looking at the satellite data, I think there are landmines on that hill," the group doesn't thank you for your diligence.
No, they turn on you for lacking faith.
Right. The organization loses its immune system against bad ideas.
Losing the organizational immune system. That is a chilling way to visualize it.
It really
You have
is.
a body that can't fight off a disease because the brain is telling it that everything is fine.
Exactly.
And that leads to the third pitfall, the succession failure. What happens to the body when that magnetic brain leaves?
It frequently collapses.
Just falls apart.
Yeah, because charismatic leaders tend to build organizations that are entirely dependent on their personal gravity rather than building durable systems.
Or decentralized decision-making process.
Or independent institutional capabilities. Everything routes through them.
So when that leader inevitably leaves, whether they retire, move to another company, or pass away, the organization suddenly realizes it literally does not know how to function.
It was a house of cards constructed around one person's ego.
Okay, so if charisma is this double-edged sword that so often ends up serving the leader's ego while hollowing out the organization's long-term health, what happens when we completely invert the model?
That's where things get really interesting.
What happens if we take the spotlight off the visionary at the top and shine it entirely on the people doing the work?
We enter the realm of servant leadership.
I love this framework.
It's powerful. It was first introduced by Robert Greenleaf in 1970 and has been rigorously developed by researchers like James Lobb and Robert Liddon since then.
And it completely flips the traditional corporate script, doesn't it?
Totally. The core internal question for a traditional leader is often, what can this organization do for me? How can this team's performance advance my career or increase my bonus?
Right, it's very self-centric.
But the servant leader's primary driving question is, how do I serve the people and the mission I have been entrusted to lead?
They fundamentally subordinate their own ego and interests to the needs of their followers.
Exactly.
Now, to a lot of people in highly competitive industries, that probably sounds like a feel-good utopian philosophy that would get you eaten alive in the real world.
Oh, people dismiss it as soft all the time.
But the empirical research over the last 2 decades tells a completely different story.
A massively different story. When leaders actually operate this way, the outcomes are staggering.
You see significantly higher employee engagement, deeper institutional trust, massively lower turnover rates.
And ultimately, better financial outcomes.
Right. But the most interesting metric here is the spike in what psychologists call organizational citizenship behavior.
Yes. That is the academic term for the holy grail of management discretionary effort.
Okay, break that down for us. What is discretionary effort?
It encompasses all the positive, constructive actions people take that go completely beyond their formal job description.
Like the senior employee who stays an hour late to help a struggling new hire navigate the software.
Exactly. Or the person from marketing who takes the initiative to fix a broken communication process with the sales team, even though they won't get any formal credit for it.
You cannot mandate that kind of behavior in a contract.
No, you can't. You cannot write it into a KPI. You can only create an environment where people intrinsically want to give that effort.
And servant leadership is remarkably effective at generating it.
It is. Which brings us to the massive data set from Jack Zenger and Joseph Folkman.
This research is so incredibly practical because they didn't just study leaders in a vacuum, right?
Right. They surveyed hundreds of thousands of followers.
They went straight to the source and asked employees what they actually want, what actually generates trust, and what makes them willing to be led.
And the findings completely dismantle the myth of the heroic visionary.
I found this part so validating.
Oh, it's amazing. When you look at the data on the followers' wish list, the absolute top cluster of traits has absolutely nothing to do with raw intelligence or grand vision or charisma.
Nothing at all.
The top cluster is entirely anchored in character and integrity.
Meaning followers are desperately looking for honesty, extreme reliability, and strict consistency between what a leader says and what they actually do.
Yes. And crucially, they are looking for a leader's willingness to acknowledge their own mistakes without deflecting blame.
Because people have an incredibly hypersensitive radar for hypocrisy.
They can spot it a mile away.
Right. Like, if a leader stands up at an all-hands meeting and gives this beautiful, impassioned speech about the importance of work-life balance and mental health,
Oh, I know where this is going.
but then they routinely email their team at 11:00 p.m. on a Saturday, expecting an immediate reply.
The followers notice instantly.
The words mean nothing. The trust evaporates, and it is almost impossible to get back.
The gap between stated values and actual behavior is exactly where trust goes to die.
That's a great way to put it. So what's right below integrity on this massive wish list?
Competence and results.
Okay, so you still have to be good at your job.
Oh, absolutely. Followers absolutely want someone who knows what they are doing. They need to see a track record of accomplishment and technical understanding.
Because an empathetic leader who is incompetent just generates anxiety and skepticism.
Right. But the critical finding in the research is that competence is necessary, but it is entirely insufficient on its own.
Yes. I always think about competence without integrity, like driving a really, really fast car that has no brakes.
Ah, that's terrifying.
Right. It's only going to get you moving out of the driveway, and it might even look impressive to the neighbors for a minute.
But as a passenger inside that car,
You aren't enjoying the ride. You are white-knuckling the door handle. You are bracing for the G-force of the turns, constantly waiting for a catastrophic crash.
because you know the brakes don't work.
Exactly. Followers will cautiously comply with a competent leader who lacks integrity because they have to pay their mortgage.
Yeah.
But they will never fully engage.
They are bracing for impact because their psychological intuition tells them that the moment things go wrong, this highly competent, low-integrity leader will throw them under the bus to save themselves.
Without hesitation. And that brings us to the third critical element. Followers demand genuine care for people.
Followers are highly attuned to whether their leader views them as a whole human being or just as a human resource to be extracted for quarterly gains.
Like, does the leader know anything about their lives outside the office?
Do they advocate for their career growth?
Do they notice the subtle signs when someone is burning out?
Right. When a leader manages to combine integrity, competence, and genuine care, it generates a profound, almost unbreakable level of loyalty.
So why does this specific combination unlock so much of that discretionary effort we talked about? Like, what is happening in the brain of the employee when they realize their boss actually cares about them?
It creates an environment of profound psychological safety.
Psychological safety.
Yes. When followers truly believe that their leader has their best interests at heart, when they know they aren't being used instrumentally for the leader's own advancement, the entire cognitive dynamic of the workplace shifts.
How so?
They stop spending 50% of their mental energy managing the leader's impression of them.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
They stop trying to look busy or hiding their mistakes.
Exactly. Instead, they take intellectual risks. They bring up massive structural problems early when they're still small and fixable instead of hiding them out of fear of retribution.
They offer brutal honesty instead of sycophancy.
Because it's safe to do so.
Okay, so if followers have this incredibly sensitive radar for hypocrisy, and they desperately need a leader who cares and acts with consistency, I'm imagining a scenario where I manage a team.
Okay, let's hear it.
Say I have a 20-year veteran who knows the systems inside and out, and I have a brand new hire fresh out of college.
Two very different people.
Right. If I treat them both with the exact same level of care and direction in the name of being consistent, my veteran is going to feel patronized and micromanaged.
Absolutely.
And my rookie is going to feel completely abandoned.
Right.
So how does a leader actually balance the need for consistency with the reality that people need different things?
That tension is exactly what situational leadership theory addresses.
I was hoping we'd get to this.
It's brilliant. Developed by Paul Hersey and Kenneth Blanchard in the 1960s, it remains one of the most robust and practically useful findings in organizational psychology.
What's the core premise?
The core premise is that there is no single right leadership style. The appropriate style depends entirely on the follower's level of competence and their level of commitment regarding a very specific task.
That's a huge distinction. It's not about the person's overall personality. It's about the person in relation to, like, the specific spreadsheet they're building on a Tuesday at 2 p.m.
Yes, exactly. Hersey and Blanchard break this down into 4 follower states, and they require a leader to shift gears dynamically to match them.
Let's walk through what that actually looks like in practice.
Okay, imagine an employee, let's call her Sarah, who has just been hired and is facing a highly complex new software system.
Okay, Sarah on day 1.
Right. In the first state, she is the enthusiastic beginner. She has low competence for this specific task because she's never seen the software, but she has high enthusiasm because it's her first week and she wants to impress.
So what does the leader do?
For this state, the leader must use a directive style.
Meaning?
This means sitting down and giving clear, highly specific instructions on what to click, how to format the reports, and when they need to be filed.
Some people might call that micromanaging.
They might, but in this state, you aren't micromanaging because you distrust her. You are providing the structural guardrails she desperately needs because she literally does not know what she's doing yet.
But that honeymoon phase ends quickly.
Very quickly.
A few weeks later, Sarah realizes the software is glitchy, the reports are harder than she thought, and she starts making mistakes.
Right, and she enters the second state, the struggling learner.
She has built up some competence, but her confidence is shot and her motivation is plummeted.
Yes. And if the leader just keeps giving cold directives at this stage, she's going to quit.
So what's the shift?
This is where the leader must shift into a coaching style.
That sounds harder.
It is arguably the most demanding style for a leader. It requires providing both high direction, because she is still making technical errors, and needs guidance and high emotional support, because she is frustrated and doubting herself.
The leader is sitting with her, explaining the why behind the complex processes, soliciting her input on how to make it easier, but ultimately still making the final calls and guiding her very closely.
Exactly. It's time-consuming.
Fast forward a few months, Sarah finally gets the hang of the software. She enters the third state, the capable but hesitant follower.
Right. She has good competence. She knows how to run the reports perfectly, but maybe her motivation fluctuates.
Or she lacks the confidence to hit send on a company-wide email without having you review it first.
Yes. In this state, the leader must actively pull back and shift to a supporting style.
Okay, what does that look like?
You stop telling her how to do the task. You stop proofreading the reports. Your focus shifts entirely to facilitating, listening, and empowering her to take the wheel.
So when she comes to your office asking what to do, you don't give her the answer.
No, you ask her what she thinks the answer is. You act as the safety net, encouraging her to trust her own earned competence.
And finally, a year later, she has mastered the system. She is training other people on it. She reaches the fourth state, the expert.
High competence and high motivation.
And this is where the leader must shift to a delegating style.
Exactly. You completely hand over responsibility for decision-making and problem-solving regarding that software.
Your job is now just to define the desired outcome, ensure she has the budget and resources she needs, and then fundamentally get out of her way.
Right. Because if you revert to a directal style and try to tell this expert how to format her reports, she will feel intensely patronized and you will destroy her motivation.
I feel like a lot of people listening might feel some cognitive dissonance here, though.
How so?
Well, if I'm a manager and I'm constantly shifting how I treat people, giving Sarah strict directives on Monday, but completely ignoring her on Friday because I'm delegating a different task to her, while simultaneously holding someone else's hand through a coaching phase, aren't I going to look completely erratic?
I see what you mean.
Didn't we just establish that the #1 thing followers crave is consistency?
It is a vital paradox, and honestly, it's a trap that destroys many well-meaning managers.
How do you avoid the trap?
You must draw a hard line between consistency of character and consistency of tactics.
Oh.
Your followers absolutely demand that you are consistent in your character, your ethical values, your integrity, and your genuine care for their well-being. That baseline can never waver.
Right.
But your tactics, how you communicate, how closely you monitor a task, how much direction you give, must be highly, almost surgically flexible.
It makes me think of the medical profession.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. Like a great doctor is fiercely consistent in their character. They consistently care about curing their patients.
Yes.
But their tactic, the specific treatment they prescribe, has to change drastically based on the specific disease sitting in the examination room.
Exactly. If a doctor gave every single patient who walked through the door the exact same antibiotic, regardless of whether they had a cold, a broken leg, or a migraine, we wouldn't call that doctor consistent.
No, we would revoke their medical license for malpractice.
Exactly. A leader's most valuable asset is not perfecting a single default management style that they feel comfortable with.
It is building a broad, diverse repertoire of styles and cultivating the acute situational judgment to know exactly which tool to pull for the belt at any given moment.
Yes, the leader who is uniformly directive will crush the spirit of their experts, and the leader who is uniformly delegating will leave their beginners to drown.
Okay, so if organizational effectiveness relies so heavily on adapting to context, on suppressing your own ego to elevate others, and on deep emotional intelligence and situational flexibility,
I think I know where you're going with this.
It begs a massive, uncomfortable question. Why do our organizational structures consistently, almost universally, favor a very specific, narrow demographic of leaders?
Yep.
If we need empathetic, adaptable facilitators, why do the top tiers of management look the way they do? We have to look at the data on the gender gap and leadership.
We do, because it is perhaps the most glaring example of the massive disconnect between rigorous psychological research and organizational reality.
The data here is just undeniable.
It is. When researchers conduct massive meta-analyses comparing male and female leaders across countless industries, the findings are remarkably consistent.
There is no significant overall difference in effectiveness ratings between men and women.
None. They lead equally effectively on average. In fact, if you isolate certain dimensions, particularly the behaviors associated with transformational leadership, which includes inspiring followers, developing people, and modeling ethical values, women actually show a slight, statistically significant advantage in the research.
But then you walk into the C-suite of almost any Fortune 500 company, and women remain dramatically underrepresented in senior leadership positions globally.
Dramatically.
If the data proves they are equally, if not slightly more, effective at the exact behaviors that drive long-term success, why is there such a massive, impenetrable bottleneck?
The research provides a few major explanations for this, starting with what psychologists call the double bind.
The double bind.
Right. It's a deeply entrenched, systemic cultural phenomenon where women in leadership face competing, contradictory expectations that men simply do not face.
Give us an example of how that works.
Well, a female leader is often penalized for displaying dominant, assertive, or highly decisive behaviors, the very behaviors traditionally, if mistakenly, associated with leadership.
Because those behaviors violate cultural gender norms that expect women to be accommodating and soft.
Exactly. But simultaneously, if she displays communal, nurturing behaviors, she is penalized for violating the traditional male-coded norms of what a strong leader should look like.
It's infuriating. It's exactly like trying to play a high-stakes game where the rules fundamentally change depending on whose turn it is.
It's an impossible standard.
You are told you absolutely must speak up, command the room, and take charge to win the promotion, but every single time you open your mouth to do exactly that, a cultural referee throws a penalty flag on the play for being too aggressive.
You are trapped in an unwinnable loop.
And that loop is compounded heavily by the second major factor, attribution bias.
Right. This is the psychological mechanism where the exact same behaviors are judged entirely differently depending on the gender of the person performing them.
Let's walk through how this actually looks in a normal corporate environment, because this blew my mind.
Okay.
Imagine a high-stakes board meeting. The company is facing a bad quarter, and they need to make a difficult decision on budget cuts.
Tense room.
Very tense. A male vice president speaks up, slams his hand on the table to emphasize a point, cuts off a meandering conversation, and makes a hard, unpopular call.
Okay, we've all seen that guy.
Right. In the performance reviews later that week, he is labeled decisive, commanding, and a strong leader who can handle the pressure.
Unanimous praise.
But now, imagine a female vice president does the exact same thing. She uses the exact same words, the exact same tone, and makes the exact same hard call.
The attribution bias kicks in instantly.
Instantly.
Instead of being praised for decisiveness, she is labeled aggressive, bossy, or difficult to work with.
And it works the other way too, right?
Yes. Conversely, if the male VP expresses genuine care for his team's well-being and advocates for mental health days during a stressful sprint, he is praised as a warm, modern, emotionally intelligent leader.
But if the female VP exhibits the exact same care,
it is often dismissed as her being too soft, maternal, or not serious enough about bottom-line performance.
the psychological dissonance is staggering, and it actively destroys the company's ability to promote its best talent.
It really does. And beyond these insidious psychological biases in the room, there are deeply rooted pipeline and structural factors that occur outside the room.
Like the lack of senior sponsors.
Yes. And to be clear, a sponsor is very different from a mentor.
A mentor gives you advice over coffee.
Right. A sponsor is someone with real systemic power who actively uses their own political capital to advocate for your promotion behind closed doors.
Women have drastically fewer sponsors.
Drastically. Plus, there is the undeniable reality of disproportionate family caregiving roles, which often limit a person's availability for those high-visibility, after-hours networking activities.
The 7-point RPM dinners, The weekend golf trips.
Exactly. The things that are historically, implicitly required to get noticed by the executive team.
We really have to recognize the profound real-world cost of this. These barriers, the double bind, the attribution bias, the structural hurdles, they are not natural, inevitable features of human organization.
No, they're entirely cultural constructs.
And by allowing these biases to persist unexamined, by keeping these structural barriers in place, organizations are actively leaving massive amounts of leadership potential on the table.
If you arbitrarily restrict your leadership pool based on flawed cultural assumptions, you are systematically weakening your own organization's ability to compete and innovate.
It's just bad business.
It is.
Bringing all these threads together, we've torn down the romance of the heroic leader. We've looked at the dangerous underbelly of raw charisma.
We've explored how situational flexibility completely outperforms static personality traits.
And how deeply ingrained biases blind us to actual talent. So if we throw out the airport bestsellers, what does the daily reality of truly great evidence-based leadership actually look like?
Synthesizing all of this rigorous research paints a picture of leadership that is far more mundane, yet exponentially more demanding than the popular heroic version.
Mundane but demanding. I like that.
Great leaders are rarely the visionary orators delivering cinematic speeches. The research shows they consistently execute 5 highly unglamorous daily practices.
Let's go through them. The first one is creating clarity. And this sounds so simple, but it is shockingly rare.
People simply perform at their best when they know exactly what is expected of them, how their specific role connects to the broader mission, and why their daily work actually matters.
The most consistent finding across all employee engagement research is that role clarity, removing the ambiguity from expectations, is a massive driver of motivation.
Great leaders do not hoard information to seem important. They constantly synthesize the chaos of the market and clarify it for their team.
The second practice is removing obstacles. I love this concept because it completely changes the physical posture of a leader.
How so?
Well, they aren't standing behind the team with a whip, and they aren't standing at the finish line with a megaphone.
Right. Think about the most exhausting, frustrating days you have at work. It is rarely the actual core work that drains you. It is the friction.
It's the broken software, the endless bureaucratic red tape, the cross-departmental political battles.
Evidence-based leaders act like snowplows.
Snowplows.
Yes. They are constantly looking a mile ahead of their team to identify and remove that systemic friction. They fight for necessary resources, and they resolve the interpersonal conflicts.
They don't just tell the team to push harder, they clear the road so the team can actually run faster.
Exactly. The third practice is developing people. And this isn't just sending someone an automated HR link to a mandatory training module on a Friday afternoon.
Definitely not.
It is a genuine, active, time-consuming commitment to helping others reach their potential. It is the core of servant leadership in action.
It means taking the time to sit down and use that highly demanding coaching style we discussed earlier, actively mentoring an employee through a failure, even when it would be significantly faster and easier for the leader to just do the tasks themselves.
Yes. The fourth practice is modeling what they ask for, because human beings are wired to watch behavior. Behavior is the strongest communication channel on Earth.
What a leader actually does tells the followers what is truly valued far more loudly than any corporate mission statement framed on the wall ever could.
If you demand punctuality from your team, you must be the first one in the room.
If you demand frugality during a budget crisis, you cannot fly first class while your team flies coach.
Leaders who exempt themselves from their own standards breed deep, irreversible cynicism. But leaders who hold themselves to the highest standard create a normative, healthy culture where the rules apply to everyone.
And finally, the fifth, practice acknowledging mistakes. We saw this screaming from the data in the Zenger and Folkman research.
Admitting when you are wrong, clearly and publicly, without deflecting blame onto the changing market, the vendors, or another department, proves something invaluable to your team.
It proves that you value the truth and the health of the organization significantly more than you value your own ego.
Nothing builds unmatched psychological safety and trust faster than a leader who can sit at the head of the table and say, I made the wrong call on this strategy. I own it. Let's fix it together.
If you are listening to this right now, whether you are leading a massive multinational corporation, whether you are managing a small retail team of 3 people, or even if you are just trying to navigate complex group dynamics in your local community board, This is the most empowering takeaway from all of this research.
You do not need to be born with some mystical magnetic aura.
You don't need a reality distortion field.
These evidence-based tools, adapting your style to the situation, maintaining deep integrity, acting as a snowplow for your team, and having the courage to admit when you are wrong, these are not innate genetic traits.
No, they are behaviors.
Wow.
And behaviors are entirely within your control to practice, refine, and master every single day.
Leadership is fundamentally a practice, a daily discipline, not a personality type.
Which leaves us with one final, deeply provocative thought to mull over based on everything we've uncovered today.
Let's hear it.
If leadership is fundamentally a dynamic process that is highly dependent on context, and if the science proves that no single human being possesses the exact right traits and skills for every single situation, maybe the future of human organization isn't about finding the leader to sit permanently at the top of the pyramid.
That is a massive paradigm shift. What if the most advanced, resilient organizations of the future stop treating leadership as a static identity tied to a job title and start treating it as a dynamic, rotating role?
Imagine a fluid organizational structure where the person who takes charge shifts day by day or project by project, based purely on whose specific situational competence perfectly matches the immediate problem at hand.
A mesh network of competence rather than a rigid hierarchy.
Think about that the next time you walk past that overflowing business section at the bookstore. Maybe the reason none of those thousands of books have magically fixed our institutions is because they're all trying to teach us how to be the permanent, unflappable hero, when the real secret to driving human progress is just knowing exactly when it's time to be the snowplow.